Their phone on. Okay. So hello and welcome to today's Retail Loss Prevention Seminar. I'm Jeff Diamond. The retail industry is transforming and it's transforming fast.
Welcome to WebEx. Press 1 to be connected to your meeting.
We're not in WebEx. I don't know what that's about. But I think recent global events are transforming the retail industry fast. I think that we're seeing acceleration in transformation.
Welcome to WebEx. Press 1 to be connected to your meeting.
If anybody's got WebEx on, would you mind cutting that off, please? I think one key focus of retailers today is how to keep up with the needs of the customer in this coronavirus world, and at the same time, maintain a healthy business metric like their margins, right? So they can stay in business. Technologies, I think, like computer vision play a key role enabling this transformation. And we have two experts today that will help us and tell us and share their experiences in computer vision in the retail industry. I suggest that, just a little housekeeping here, feel free to post your questions at any time in the Q&A window, and I'll address those to the panelists, and we'll go from there. So feel free to do that, and let's get started. So guys, introduce yourselves. Chandra.
Yeah. Greetings, Jeff, and greetings to all the participants. I lead the retail practice for North America. My role is just not only building solutions, but helping customers. Pretty much been working with the top retail accounts of North America as well as worldwide, and been helping them transform themselves. So glad to share my view and happy to be part of this panel.
We're not hearing you, Matt.
There we go. Hey,
There
Jeff, thanks for the introduction. Chandra, pleasure to be speaking with you today and all the attendees that are on the phone. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. My name is Matt Torgo. I have the pleasure of leading NVIDIA's retail practice across the US, and we work with the most innovative retailers across the world to help them consume, deploy, and understand how to take AI and apply it to their business.
Okay, great. So, I think unlike other industries, the retail industry is unique, right? We can all experience that transformation firsthand as an end customer. And we've heard so much in the news about the state of the retail industry in this ever-changing world we're in today. Some of the news is about successful retailers, right? That are doing a good job, they're making money, they understand how to work in this environment. And then, we also hear about the not so successful retailers that are even having to close their stores, especially well-established stores that have been around forever. So Matt and Chandra, I'm really interested. Can you give us a sense of where the retail industry is today? And Matt, let's hear from you first.
Sure. So if we look at the retail industry, and before we get into kind of the AI-centric part of our discussion today, I think there's some trends that we should take a look at in how all these outside factors have really pushed retailers to change the way that they interact with their customers. So first off, if we look at the global retail industry pre-COVID, it's a $26 trillion industry. So this is a law of big numbers. There's different margin thresholds, et cetera. But at the end of the day, this is a massive business worldwide, and retailers understand there's a huge opportunity in front of them to capture revenue. When we look further beyond that, profit margins are fairly low within retailers. This statistic is a mix of both big box, retailers, grocers, et cetera. But the profit margins are very, very slim. So retailers are always looking at ways to either help increase net profit margin or a way to decrease costs. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that today around how AI is impacting that. Now, on the other side of the coin, and this was a report published by McKinsey, Automation in Retail, retailers believe that there'll be a 3x increase in productivity with AI. And what we're finding is key components of that is computer vision, whereas if you can start to analyze the world of retailer through images and photos and really parse out interesting data from that and make better decisions, we actually can get to increasing, again, retailers' profit margins and also increasing total productivity across the board for all retailers. And the last point I wanted to make here is that also from this McKinsey report is they believe that with taking advantage of AI across various use cases in the retailers, there'll be $1 trillion in increased annual profit, again, hitting the bottom line of retailers and allowing them to be more competitive. Now, in addition to the retail opportunity, we get the question quite often, why retail and why now? And I've broken this down into 5 key areas. The first one being the Amazon effect. Years ago, we always had to get into our cars and drive to the store to pick up the goods that we wanted. But Amazon has completely revolutionized how we consume products, all the way from memberships like Prime, or even now being able to get any products that we want within 2 hours. Because of this drastic change, retailers have had to take advantage of new technologies to be able to interact with their customers. Secondly, and I thought this was a really interesting way of looking at retail, is lack of regulation. NVIDIA and Dell, we focus very heavily on the financial services institutions as well as healthcare providers. But at the end of the day, there's no regulation in the retail industry. So if there's great technology, they have the ability to consume it and deploy it in a really rapid fashion. The third area that I want to also talk about of why now is core to store, or the new edge. We hear many of the telco providers out there talking about mobile edge computing or edge computing. We hear the cloud service providers speaking about it as well. But really the new edge today is going to be the store. And what we'll discuss on our conversation today is how do we help retailers identify key use cases that help them increase margins, but also how do they start to take a look at a new computing platform in the store, as the store is a new edge that's going to have to provide value-added services. The fourth area that we can focus on is margin pressures. And again, we talked about this a little bit more. Now with large retailers having less foot traffic, or customers want to interact with them in a different way, they must figure out a way to increase margin and return shareholder value. And the last area of why retail and why now, if you want to advance the slide, is valuable and scarce data. In the world of AI, it's all about meaningful data and data in, data out. What was really fascinating is if you think about e-commerce data, it's widely accessible. Matt Torgo, he's a male, he's in the age range of 25 to 50, he lives in this location. We could probably understand pretty good data. But if you think about inside the store and how Matt interacts with products, if you see me today, I'm in the retail store. If I pick up a banana and then I move over and pick up an orange, why did that take place? And did I actually convert on making those particular purchases? At the end of the day today, the data that retailers have is the POS data around what consumers actually buy. But now with the advancements of AI and computer vision, retailers can actually understand how their customers are interacting with different products and what ultimately is being purchased across the shopping experience. So the last area that I want to touch on, if you'd advance the slide here, is the intelligent store of the future, and where both Dell and NVIDIA come into place around architecting a new computing platform to help deliver these services. The first area that we're looking at is applying a unified compute platform in the store. Dell has done a wonderful job of creating various server platforms that encompass our GPUs, or graphics processing units, that again allow you to run these advanced workloads inside the store. The other area that retailers are starting to look at is sensors and cameras. How do we start to embed technologies on the shelf, in the overhead cameras, and how do we quickly process that data to get meaningful information in a time-bound period so we can ensure that you have the best shopping experience possible? So again, we've identified the retail opportunity, we've identified why now is the time, and thirdly, we've identified how we will start to architect the store of the future. Chandra, anything else you'd like to add to this?
Sure, yeah. Let me just walk through the 3 points that Matt just walked through, and I'll give some additional color commentary. One of the areas that we have been focusing on opportunity is the brick and mortar stores, because not a single day that would go for you if you open the newspaper, especially now. Many of these retailers are going belly up. But at the same time, there are a lot of retailers doing extremely well. So if you look at the latest Department of Commerce data, almost 86% of the transactions are still happening in brick and mortar stores. So even though the online is picking up, there's still a significant amount of transaction happening. Why this is important? That comes to this chart, the intelligent store of the future. So the notion of what is a store? So when we talk to our customers, one of the questions that always happens is, always that comes about is retailers keep asking, they have the best real estate in the world. What do I do with that, right? So the notion of store, what a store means to a user. Those days, and I say those days 15 years back, the retail industry was more of a product-centric industry. You build a store, put products, people would come. Guess what? As Matt said, the Amazon effect. Matt, I'm getting a feedback from you. I'm getting your WebEx. Yep. Okay. All right.
I think it may be an attendee on the phone because I'm on mute right now.
Okay.
Chandra.
Cool. Not a problem. So basically what Matt talked about, the Amazon effect. What Amazon literally did was put customer first. So now the retail experience is about the customer experience. Is it only about customer experience as we think about it? It's how do customers interact with employees, interact with inventory. And if you link this thing together and based on the business model, you are going to see lots and lots of opportunities to drive margins. So in summary, it's all about margins and of course growth, but start with margins. You can make a lot of impact. But in order to drive margins, you have to understand how retailers are doing their business, which is the 3 core components. And that is what the notion of intelligent store, which we'll talk about it as we go along. Back to you, Matt. And back to you, Jeff.
Okay, so if we talk about margins, right? One of the things we've got to talk to is loss prevention, right? That directly affects margin. So we've heard a lot about digital transformation, the retail customers with edge compute, computer vision. All these are long discussion topics, but given the short time, and we even started a little late here, let's focus on an example. Let's look at margins are critical to those retailers. So let's look at shrinkage and impacts, how that affects the margin. And Chandra, walk us through loss prevention or asset protection. Why retailers are paying attention now to that more than ever, I think, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yep, great question. So when we look at this, the retail store holistically, right? I see the retail stores always in 3 buckets. I mean, you can see this pattern when I talk. I always try to see problems, and if I can distill in buckets of 3, I'm golden, right? So front of the store, middle of the store, back of the store, right? You can look at that. So we focus more on the front of the store. The reason is that that's where the transactions are happening. So whenever transaction happens, you can always make it better. You can improve something. So one of the areas we focused was loss prevention. Most of the retailers, in the interest of reducing their reducing the costs, have been automating. You can see it. All of us go to retail stores. There's always a self-service checkout, but that introduced something interesting. It introduced errors in terms of people can do misscans or double scans. And that is a good part. The bad part is that there are criminal gangs operating where they can do ticket switching. They will think you're that they are swapping, scanning a bubble gum, but it can be something else, high value items, right? And then you also on the staff lanes, you have sweetheartening of deals. When the friends and family comes, they get additional discounts. There are a lot of things happening. Why this is important. Some of the numbers shows after self-service checkouts, there was like 10% up in the shrink rate. So what we have been trying to do is, how do we help retailers in achieving their goal of reducing their operating costs by automation, but at the same time leaving the shrink out? One aspect, go ahead, Jeff. Can you flip the chart to the next one?
Sure.
Yeah, one aspect of shrink that we have to understand is that it's as you're doing, it's about the intent. So when we look at this, when we talk about technologies, it's about the process. So when you're making a transaction, here's a human being doing something, and you're trying to understand the intent. So the only way you can do when you do a self-service checkout, if someone is doing something wrong, you have to see their behavior, what they do. That requires a lot of cognitive skills. So a human can understand that. but I cannot put a human in every self-service checkout lanes. If that's the case, I can even have a staff lane. So you need some level of what you call cognitive intelligence. And that is where AI and other technologies truly come into picture. We'll talk more about this because what we are really trying, our hypothesis is that as we are helping these retailers, we need to come up with some good entry points so that that would start their transformation, but would also help them to create a good way of driving other use cases. Next chart, please.
So cognitive approach, I like it. I guess this is a great segue into AI, right? So how are retailers using AI? You know, you guys want to discuss that, or do you want to take that later on?
Yeah.
I can take it. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
So, and I'll pass it to you, Chandra, here. You know, AI is really interesting. Again, if we talked about the margin pressures, we talked about how large the market is, and we talked about the headwinds and tailwinds that they're having. At the end of the day, AI has to drive some sort of business value. And as Chandra discussed on the asset protection and loss prevention side, there's a direct correlation, again, to business value. If we stop shoppers that are maliciously or unintentionally stealing from the store, which in the retail world is called shrink, we have the ability of increasing margins because those products are no longer lost. The other interesting areas is all the downstream effects to asset protection and loss prevention, as such that if I go into the store looking for SKU number 1, but SKU number 1 had left the store earlier because someone else had stolen it, there's now issues with supply chain and understanding where the rest of the inventory is. So that's kind of area number 1. Number 2 is AI is so important because we could then have beyond human intelligence. There's no way that an individual could understand all the transactions that are taking place in the store and make meaningful decisions on how to either increase or decrease some sort of interaction. So the idea here is, how do we interact, or how do we overlay AI with human intervention and allow the humans to go and focus on more meaningful tasks like upselling and cross-selling and customer service and interacting with the individuals as they're walking up and down the floors, versus doing lower level tasks that we can automate through some of these intelligent services that Chandra mentioned. Chandra, anything else you'd like to add?
Definitely, Matt. One of the aspects of, AI is nothing new to retailers. They have been doing this for a long time, especially in data lakes. Marketing has been doing this for a long time, looking at data. But where this is becoming extremely important, as Pat said, why now? Why retail? Why now is that? As the battlefield, sorry for using that term, but literally from a marketing staff, from a business strategy standpoint, as retailers are competing for their best customers or market share, some of this thing is shifting to stores. We talked about the role of the stores, but then we have to make decisions in near real time. As Matt said, if a customer walks in, you want to know who the customers are. That's the data that shows when you walk in, if a customer makes eye contact with it, or an employee makes eye contact within certain amount of time, the customer likes to stay there in the store for a longer time. If they try out something, the probability that they buy actually goes up like 80% or something. And if someone gives some level of information or some help with a trusted sales associate, you not only close the transaction, but you increase the basket size, you buy more. All of us can relate to it. That is what retailers want. It's easier said than done. So I used to ask some of this whenever I walk to the stores. I ask them as a store manager, what differentiates between a good store and a bad store? Is it customers? No. Is it employees? Probably. But really what it is putting everything together. So the good manager always excels because they have it in their head. They know how to do it. But you find it's very difficult to scale that at a large level to 1,000, 10,000s of stores. What we really need is, how do you bring those practices in a way that systems can do? And that's where AI plays a role. That's why I talked about cognitive intelligence. We'll talk more about it as how we can bring these technologies so that you can drive real outcomes. Back to you, Jay.
Now to align this, now to apply this back to the use case that we're talking about here, which was asset protection, AI is paramount. Again, there's so many scenarios taking place in real time at both the point of sale with the staff lane as well as with a self-checkout, that there's many things that we take a look at in order to be considered successful and how to kind of best define the success. So Jeff, if you transition the slide one more, Chandra and I have outlined some of the considerations.
One of the things I'd like to say here is, let's stay focused on loss prevention, but we've got about 5 minutes to do the rest of this, maybe 6 or 7 there, because we started late. So I just want to make sure we stay on time so we can have some questions as they roll in, be able to answer those. So how about if you guys would walk me through one of your engagements and tell me what are the considerations and how you define success, right?
Absolutely. So I'll start this quickly. I'll go to Chandra, and then Chandra, maybe we jump to kind of what sets us apart and how we get started. Okay. So first off, considerations, we categorize these into 3 areas. One is, what are the use cases that we want to target? And some retailers have staff lanes or self-checkout lanes. So depending upon the mix of that and how they see the growth taking part in those different areas of the store, that's where we heavily focus. The second area is understanding the POS environment or point of sale environment. Dell has done an incredibly great job on understanding how that architects together with both the hardware and services that would fit inside the store, as well as the current technology that they're using. And then the third one is, how do we look at the operational aspect of these sorts of solutions? How do we ensure that once we install the AI or the new application, that it fits very well into how the store operates? And as Chandra mentioned, making sure the entire package is cohesive and put together so that everyone from the employee to the customer has a great experience.
Just a quick add to it. I know we are running short of time, so thanks for Jeff pointing that out. No two retailers are alike, and retailers deal with hundreds and thousands of SKUs. So operationalizing at scale is very important. It's very hard. So it really comes down to your ability to understand the SKUs, your ability to deploy at stores, your ability to get the right price to performance, because you can always solve this problem, but if the cost is almost like going to the moon, nobody would care. It has to be in the context of the store. So there are a lot of parameters that we work with. So we sit with the customer, understand what they do, find out the right fit pattern there, and then take it to the next level. Back to you, Jeff.
Okay, let me know if you guys want to go through these quicker or...
I'll do real fast. I don't spend any time. So primarily what this process is, it's all again a process. All we are trying to do is make this process better. The top of this is your current point of sale. You scan, ching, it goes through, and the point of system completes a transaction. What we do here is that trust but verify. Easier said than done, right? Instead of 2 pairs of eyes looking at it, I have a camera right on top of that scanner. And there is a learning algorithm that understands what this is. And if there is something, it pauses the transaction. Very simple. I'm going to stop it right here because there are lots and lots of technology that goes underneath, which we try to see if we can cover in the previous one. It's primarily deep learning, multi-layer networks, self-learning, a lot of things that goes in, but that's where the magic comes in. To think like human, we cannot think, but we can be closer to human. Back to you.
So Jeff, I think we should continue on maybe to how to get started so that we save some time for Q&A.
Yep.
Okay, so you want to start here about this one? So, we wanted.
Sure.
So there's lots of combinations to all the technology stack, right, Chandra, that you were just talking about. You have to look at those kind of things. But what sets Dell Technologies and NVIDIA apart? What do we do better than other people around these kind of issues and problems, like asset protection?
I'll take a real quick look, and I want Matt to jump in from his perspective as well. The important thing is what sets us apart is how do we do it at scale, which I talked about. It's a hard problem. So we focus on where we ensure successes. We need very high accuracy, right? The second one is how fast or how much you can scale. You start with 1 lane, but many of them are like 15 lanes. So how quickly you can do, so scalability. The third one is, I always jokingly tell people, software does not fall from sky to the store. And stores are the one, they do not have skills. So even though we talk about highly complex software and algorithms, when we deploy, you are literally you're delivering it in a way that it can be handled by anyone. So how do we deliver that? A simple way of deploying and managing thousands and 10,000s of stores. So this is what we have done here is that do it again, do it well. So we have been doing it for a very long time. And the value for our customers is that a very well-known structure. So when we go in, we can give you all the semantics of the solution, what it takes. When a retailer do it by themselves, it takes months or years. With working with NVIDIA, we have labs that can do. Jeff, next shot, please. Where we have done that. I want Matt has been leading this kind of program. I'd love Matt to chime in about how NVIDIA has been helping putting together the ecosystem.
Yeah, quickly here, we see retailers making two decisions. They either decide to build these solutions or they decide to consume these solutions from ISVs or independent software vendors. NVIDIA created something called our Metropolis Certification program, which ensures that the applications that you decide to run inside the store or in your environments, that they're fully optimized both from a hardware and software perspective with Dell. So on the far left side, you'll see some of the software vendors that we work with today that are not just focusing on asset protection, but a wide variety of use cases. In the middle area, you'll see we've certified a wide set of Dell servers so that you can ensure that when you deploy these at scale, they will work. We then look at some of the tools that NVIDIA has published to ensure that when you do deploy these tools that they're running optimally. And then on the right-hand side is different deployment mechanisms, everything being both on-premise and cloud native to ensure that you have the ability to deploy these again at scale. Lastly, if you progress to the next slide, Jeff, we also touched on today building a platform for a wide variety of retail use cases. Today we talked about loss prevention. In further sessions, or feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd love to go into detail around store analytics. We have a lot of retailers coming to us and saying, we're focused on the front of the store, but how do we start to focus on that center area of the store that Chandra discussed? And how do we ensure that our customers are getting the right services at the right time? And then all the way on the far right, there's a lot of interest around autonomous checkout. So how do I kind of go and consume products without ever having to interact with someone, but doing it in a very safe and scalable way?
Yep. A quick point on that. So when we are talking to customers, transformation is not an atomic operation. It's not a transactional one. It is about a multitude of steps. The important thing for retailers is that which step that you want to start first. Our recommendation is depends on what you do, but start with the step that gives you the maximum ROI. Second thing is leverage that investment that you can go put for multiple use cases. So it is what we are really presenting here is that a solution that can grow, pay for itself, but also can enable other use cases that lowers your transformation investment more. Lowers the investment, make it more attractive. So Jeff has already put this chart. How do we get started? The best example, the best way is talk to us. We have lots of use cases, and we can help you work with your retailer. And that is what my job and Matt's job is. We're more than glad to sit with you, understand what's your needs, and our team can help you with that. But if you want to look at what we have, there are two web pages that I flashed here. One is the Dell Technologies Retail Solutions page. Take a look at it. And also the NVIDIA Retail Solutions. So together we can give you a way of where to start. How do you get the engagement going? So it's primarily a kind of an engagement call to say, where's the problem? What is the best way to start? We can give you some ideas and based on our experience, where to start, how to move forward, how the journey would look like. Matt, I would love to get your view.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Chandra. At the end of the day, I would challenge everyone, you must have some sort of an AI strategy. You know, everyone's talking about it, not everyone's doing it, and some are still trying to identify the key areas, like Chandra mentioned, that drive the largest business value. But if you haven't developed this strategy or you're trying to find a way to optimize it, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help develop this for you.
Okay, I'm sold, but then again, I work here, so I have to be. I appreciate that, guys. Any of the participants that are online, if you have a question, type in the question and answer part of the screen that's down there at the bottom. It should say Q&A, and I'd be happy to read those to the panelists and get your answers.
Yeah, Jeff,
one of the things I was going to talk about, I have a question is, so when you talk about AI, how accurate does your cameras have to be? How accurate does the software have to be? I mean, you don't want a lot of crossover or false positives, so to speak. So how do you address that?
So primarily, Jeff, first of all, we start with existing infrastructure. Cameras have been there forever in stores for surveillance, and many of them are transferring or are upgrading into IP or high definition cameras. For most of the use cases, we are good. You don't need 4K and 8K. Standard HD that you do for surveillance.
So it's not a rip and replace of the cameras, huh?
Yeah, we try to keep that as minimal as possible. Having said that, for some use cases, you need to have the right angles. So as Matt said, AI is not something, you have to kind of build it with a process. So where people really fail here is that they see AI as something different. What you have to do is you should see AI as part of your journey. And when you're making new investments, take that into account as we are making investments, right? So the surveillance investments is becoming part of the customer experience investment. Those are the changes that we are seeing in the market.
So Matt, another question might be something like, so we talked about NVIDIA's GPUs and how they're really accelerating that AI experience, right? And the AI algorithms that run in the servers that Dell provides. Where do those servers exist? Are they in the stores? Are they in the cloud? Are they in a corporate data center? Can you give us a little bit more of the architecture thoughts around that?
Yeah, great question. We look at it in three different areas. So one is embedded, two is edge, and three is kind of cloud or centralized area. So one is some customers have decided to go and invest in either robotic solutions or camera solutions that have our GPUs constructed around it to run those algorithms on the device. There are some pros and cons to that, but what we find is, especially in some of these big box retailers, having a centralized compute environment inside the store allows you to take advantage of all the camera streams and all the data that's being processed in real time. The second area that we look at and where we've had the most success is retailers constructing a computing platform inside the store. What they do is they'll roll out a Dell server with our GPUs inside of it, but most importantly is they have the ability to run multiple isolated applications in parallel because there's enough computing power and enough horsepower in order to run all those applications simultaneously. NVIDIA has also published some really creative ways through software to be able to run AI algorithms in line to those camera streams. So again, you can take advantage of all that information that's coming in and be able to process it in real time to make the best decision possible. And the third area is everything that we do is cloud native. We understand that some retailers need to have a hybrid approach, so we do enable that. One thing I would caution is we do get in the realm of latency, and that if there's images or camera feeds that need to be processed in a very quick period of time, the compute must sit close to where that actual action is taking place. So at the end of the day, we've taken a full look at understanding how our customers are going to consume technology, but depending upon the use case and through our conversations with retailers and customers, we can identify the right way to architect it to ensure that it will work and work in a scalable fashion.
Wow, guys, that was a lot of information in a very short time, and we started a little late. I really want to thank the participants that were on the phone with us. I'm sure the invitation, and I'll reiterate it again, goes out that any more information that you would like on this particular use case or any of those use cases that fit around the new digital transformation in the retail industry, these two guys are willing and able and want to help you as much as possible. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for sticking with us, and we hope to see you more down the road. And for all you retailers out there, happy selling. We'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Chandra.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Jeff.